Dr. Elias Tan had been waiting for this moment for years. The distant planet of Veloria Prime shimmered in the viewport of the starship Odyssey. From orbit, the planet looked like a jewel in space, its surface covered with sparkling blue lakes, deep emerald forests, and mysterious crystal towers that reached high into the clouds. But what fascinated Elias the most were the reports of a newly discovered alien species, the Avernians. The Avernians had never been observed by humans before. Rumors from robotic probes suggested they were intelligent, social, and perhaps even capable of complex communication. Elias had been assigned by the Interstellar Xenobiology Council to live among them, study their behavior, and collect as much information as possible. His instructions were clear: observe, document, and do not interfere. The Odyssey's landing pods glided gently through Veloria Prime's atmosphere. Elias' heart raced. For years, he had studied alien life through holograms and reports. Now, he was stepping into the unknown, ready to see an alien world with his own eyes. The landing site was at the edge of a forest of crystal trees. These were not ordinary trees. Their trunks sparkled like diamonds, their branches stretched like fingers toward the sky, and their leaves glimmered with tiny lights that pulsed rhythmically. It was beautiful and alien, like nothing Elias had ever seen, and somewhere among these crystal towers lived the Avernians. Elias unpacked his observation equipment: cameras, sensors, translators, and environmental scanners. He activated his portable recorder, ready to document everything. He took a deep breath and stepped out of the pod. The air was crisp, cool, and slightly sweet. He could feel the energy of the planet in every breath. He moved carefully through the forest, following the faint trails of light that pulsed between the trees. These lights, he soon realized, were natural signals emitted by the Avernians. They moved quickly, but Elias was trained for patience. He set up his first observation post at the base of one of the tallest crystal trees, carefully hidden among the shimmering leaves. At first, there was nothing. Elias watched the environment, noting the strange flora and small, glowing creatures that flitted between the branches. Every detail mattered. But then, a movement caught his eye, a figure emerging from the top of a crystal tower. It was the first Avernian Elias had ever seen. Aris, as he would later come to know him, had a lithe, elegant body covered in smooth, reflective skin that seemed to change color with emotion. His limbs were long and graceful, ending in delicate, multi-jointed fingers. But what made him truly extraordinary were the patterns of light that ran across his body, lines, pulses, and flashes that conveyed meaning beyond words. Aris noticed Elias immediately. He tilted his head, studying the human visitor with bright, intelligent eyes. Elias froze, unsure how to react. He had trained for this moment, but nothing in a textbook could prepare him for being observed by an alien species with intelligence equal to his own. Elias activated his translator and spoke in a calm, measured tone. "I come in peace. I am here to observe, not to harm." Aris's body shimmered, sending pulses of light across the crystal branches. Elias had no idea what it meant, but the motion seemed curious rather than aggressive. Then, slowly, Aris descended the tower. He approached Elias, every movement smooth and deliberate. Elias could feel his pulse quicken. "Stay calm," he whispered to himself. "Just observe, learn, do not interfere." As Aris came closer, he began performing movements that Elias could not immediately understand. A sweep of the arm, a tilt of the head, a sequence of lights that flickered rhythmically. It looked like a ritual of some kind. Elias made careful notes, recording every detail. Days passed. Elias remained in the nest area, observing the Avernians from a safe distance. But he soon realized that Aris was different. While the rest of the colony maintained distance, Aris was fascinated by him. Every movement Elias made, every adjustment of his equipment, seemed to catch Aris's attention. Elias experimented with subtle gestures, trying to communicate. He waved a hand slowly. Aris mirrored the movement. He shifted his body pattern in response to Elias' light signals. It became clear. The Avernians interpreted his presence as meaningful, perhaps even as part of a cultural ritual. Elias' mind raced. Could it be a courtship ritual? He remembered the Interstellar Xenobiology Council's briefings. The Avernians' social interactions were largely ceremonial, often involving intricate dances, light patterns, and mutual observation. He had to remind himself. He was here to observe, not to participate. But Aris's behavior made that nearly impossible. The Avernians seemed to treat every human action as a message, responding in ways that Elias could not ignore. Even his attempts to remain neutral were interpreted as signals. One evening, as Veloria Prime's twin moons rose, casting a silver glow over the crystal trees, Elias realized something startling. Aris was inviting him into the nest itself, the central tower where the colony performed its most important rituals. Elias hesitated. This was beyond observation. The instructions were clear. Do not interfere. But leaving now could disrupt the social order of the Avernians and perhaps cause misunderstanding or hostility. And deep down, he knew that this was a rare opportunity to understand their society in depth. He activated his recording devices and cautiously moved toward the nest. Aris met him halfway, leading the way with graceful steps. The nest was even more extraordinary than Elias had imagined. The walls pulsed with soft, living light. The floor was a lattice of crystal and organic matter that seemed to respond to every step he took. Inside, the colony was in motion. Avernians performed synchronized dances, their bodies glowing in patterns that Elias could only begin to decode. Some climbed the crystalline walls, some floated in midair with the aid of subtle anti-gravity currents, all moving in harmony like a single organism. Aris guided Elias to a platform at the center. The Avernians' light patterns intensified, almost as if welcoming him formally into their society. Elias could feel the weight of their gaze, not hostile but expectant. Every Avernian in the nest paused, watching the human closely. Elias took a deep breath. He was here to observe, and yet he was already part of the ritual. Every note he took, every gesture he mirrored was being interpreted. He realized that understanding this species would require more than science. It would require intuition, empathy, and adaptability. Night fell on Veloria Prime, and Elias continued to observe. Aris remained nearby, occasionally communicating through light pulses. Elias tried to record patterns, document behaviors, and understand the rhythm of the colony. The more he watched, the more he realized how complex and intelligent the Avernians were. For the first time in his life, Elias felt both small and powerful. Small because he was alone on a distant world among beings whose perception he could barely comprehend. Powerful because he was human, capable of observation, analysis, and adaptation. As he finally prepared to rest in his observation pod, he reflected on the day. He had come to study, to record, to learn. But already, the Avernians had begun to teach him lessons about communication, patience, and respect. Tomorrow, he knew, would be even more challenging. Aris would expect him to respond, to participate in subtle ways he could not yet understand. And yet, Elias was ready. Human ingenuity had brought him to Veloria Prime, and it would guide him through whatever came next. Above the crystal towers, the moons shone brightly. The nest glimmered like a living jewel. Elias lay down, recording his final notes for the day. Observation cannot be passive here. Every action carries meaning. Understanding this species will require more than technology. It will require the human heart. And with that thought, he drifted into sleep, unaware that the Avernians had already accepted him into their world in a way that no human had ever experienced before. The next morning, Dr. Elias Tan awoke in his small observation pod at the base of the crystal nest. Sunlight filtered through the shimmering branches, casting multicolored reflections across his notes and equipment. The beauty of Veloria Prime never ceased to amaze him. Yet he could not forget the curious gaze of Aris, the Avernian who had followed him into the nest the day before. Elias stretched and reviewed his recordings from the previous day. The patterns of light, gestures, and synchronized movement fascinated him. He knew that every detail mattered. The Avernian society seemed built on ritual, symbolism, and communication through light, and misinterpreting even a small gesture could have consequences. He packed his equipment carefully and stepped into the open nest area. The air was alive with movement. Avernians climbed the crystal walls, floated along currents of air, and engaged in intricate light dances. Elias tried to remain unobtrusive, positioning his cameras and sensors as discreetly as possible, but Aris was waiting for him. The Avernian's body glimmered with an intensity that suggested both curiosity and expectation. Aris moved closer, tilting his head and pulsing his body with lights Elias could not immediately interpret. Elias raised a hand slowly, attempting a neutral gesture. Aris mirrored the motion almost instantly. It was clear that the Avernians were observing him as closely as he observed them. Elias realized that passive observation was no longer possible. His presence itself was part of the ongoing ritual, and every action he took carried meaning. Determined to learn more, Elias decided to take a careful, structured approach. He began recording small gestures of his own, slower movements, light reflections from his equipment, and hand signals that could be seen by the Avernians. He watched how the colony responded. Aris seemed to enjoy the interaction. The Avernian's lights pulsed in complex sequences, and his body moved gracefully to mimic human gestures. Other Avernians noticed too, but they kept their distance. Elias realized that Aris had become a bridge between him and the rest of the colony. For hours, Elias observed and recorded. He noted patterns. Certain light flashes indicated attention or alertness. Rapid pulses suggested excitement or curiosity. Slow, rhythmic changes seemed to communicate calm or agreement. The more he studied, the more he realized the Avernians had a highly advanced form of communication, far more nuanced than human language. Yet misunderstandings were inevitable. At one point, Elias accidentally knocked over a small sensor. The device clattered against the crystal floor. Instantly, the entire colony reacted. Lights flashed erratically, and several Avernians approached cautiously, moving in synchronized steps. Aris stepped forward, his glow intense, signaling Elias to remain calm. Elias froze. He raised his hands in a clear gesture of apology. Slowly, cautiously, the colony's lights softened. Aris pulsed with a calming rhythm, guiding Elias. From this, Elias learned an important lesson. The Avernians interpreted even minor disturbances as intentional signals. One careless action could be misread as aggression, curiosity, or even disrespect. Despite the challenges, Elias could not help but marvel at their intelligence. The Avernians were not only aware of their surroundings, but actively processed the behavior of every creature nearby. Their society functioned as a highly synchronized collective, yet each individual could communicate subtly within the larger rhythm. Elias realized that understanding their rituals was not enough. He needed to participate in a controlled way to truly learn. Days passed. Elias began to respond to the Avernians' signals more naturally. He mirrored light patterns, adjusted his movements to match the colony's rhythm, and experimented with reflective surfaces to send back subtle pulses. Slowly, he noticed changes. The colony became less tense around him. Aris, in particular, seemed increasingly trusting. One morning, as the twin moons of Veloria Prime rose above the crystal canopy, Elias noticed a new ritual in progress. A group of Avernians gathered in a circular formation, their lights creating patterns in the air. Aris approached Elias and pulsed a series of signals that seemed like an invitation. Elias hesitated, recalling the instructions: observe, do not interfere. But he realized that participation was the only way to understand. He stepped forward carefully, mirroring the motions as best as he could. The other Avernians watched but did not interrupt. Aris guided him through subtle gestures, helping him match the rhythm. For the first time, Elias felt a real connection with an alien species. It was not just observation, it was communication. But cultural misunderstandings still occurred. During one session, Elias attempted to record the light patterns using his holographic scanner. The device emitted a faint noise, which startled some Avernians. Their lights flashed rapidly, a signal Elias had learned meant alarm or confusion. Aris immediately approached, pulsing soothing sequences, but the incident reminded Elias that human technology could disrupt the colony if not used carefully. Determined to avoid further mistakes, Elias devised new strategies. He used silent, non-intrusive sensors, mirrored light using reflective panels instead of emitting his own signals, and carefully adjusted his movements to blend with the colony's natural rhythms. Over time, the Avernians began to accept him as part of their environment rather than an outsider. Elias also learned more about Aris. The Avernian was not just curious but highly intelligent and empathetic. He seemed to anticipate Elias' actions, guiding him without forcing participation. Aris's role as a cultural intermediary became clear. He was the key to understanding the Avernians' complex rituals. One afternoon, a small crisis tested their budding trust. A winged creature, unknown to Elias, flew into the nest, startling the colony. Lights flashed erratically and several Avernians moved defensively. Elias froze, unsure of what to do. Aris approached, pulsing calming sequences, and Elias followed his lead. Using hand signals and reflective panels, Elias guided the creature away, restoring peace. This event taught Elias another lesson. Human intuition combined with observation could complement the Avernians' abilities. Despite being the outsider, his presence and quick thinking could prevent misunderstandings and protect the colony. By the end of the week, Elias had made significant progress. He could recognize most of the Avernians' signals, interpret basic meanings, and even predict certain responses. Aris had become his guide, teacher, and companion. The initial misunderstanding, where Elias was seen as a participant in a ritual, had transformed into mutual respect and tentative collaboration. Elias recorded his reflections carefully. The Avernians are extraordinary. Their communication is elegant, complex, and deeply connected to their society. Understanding them requires patience, observation, and participation. Human adaptability is the key. What began as a misunderstanding may become a bridge to something far greater. As night fell again, Elias lay in his pod, thinking about the challenges ahead. He knew the Avernians' society was only partially revealed. Rituals, light patterns, and synchronized movements were just the surface. There were deeper layers of communication, emotion, and intelligence yet to uncover. Yet he felt hope. Despite the misunderstandings, human ingenuity and empathy had allowed him to begin connecting with an alien species in ways no one else had. The lessons he learned here could change humanity's understanding of intelligent life forever. Above the crystal towers, Aris's lights pulsed softly, almost like a heartbeat. Elias smiled, realizing that trust was building. The colony had accepted him, and he had begun to decode the rhythm of their lives. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more complex rituals, deeper cultural codes, and perhaps unforeseen dangers. But Elias was ready. He was not just an observer anymore. He was a participant in a living, breathing society of beings whose intelligence rivaled his own. And for the first time, He truly understood the power of human adaptability, patience, and ingenuity. The days on Veloria Prime passed slowly but purposefully for Dr. Elias Tan. Each morning, he awoke to the shimmering light of the twin moons fading from the sky, revealing the crystal forest in its full glory. He had grown accustomed to the quiet hum of the nest, the subtle flickers of light that passed between the Avernians, and the graceful movements of Eris, who now seemed to be both guide and friend. Elias had spent weeks observing, learning, and cautiously participating in the Avernians' rituals. What had begun as a misunderstanding, him being perceived as part of a courtship ritual, had evolved into an unusual but functional relationship. Eris had become his interpreter of sorts, showing him which gestures were safe, which patterns of light indicated curiosity or caution, and which movements carried the deeper meanings of Avernians' social codes. One morning, Elias noticed a shift in the colony. A low hum reverberated through the crystal towers, and the light pulses of the Avernians became more rapid and erratic. At first, Elias thought it was excitement, but the patterns were different, urgent, tense, and complex. He consulted his notes, trying to decode the signals, but they were unlike anything he had seen before. Eris approached quickly, his body glowing in intense, rapid sequences. Elias realized immediately that something was wrong. He raised a hand in a gesture of calm, and Eris mirrored him, but the pulse patterns continued, signaling danger or threat. Suddenly, a shadow moved across the upper branches. A group of flying predators, large creatures with translucent wings and sharp talons, had entered the forest. They were drawn to the nest, perhaps by curiosity or hunger. The Avernians scattered, some climbing the crystal towers, others floating above, sending frantic light signals to warn the colony. Elias froze for a moment, overwhelmed by the chaos. He had trained for field emergencies, but this was unlike anything he had encountered. The Avernians were intelligent, but they had no technology to fight these predators. If the creatures attacked the nest, the colony could be devastated. Eris pulsed urgently at Elias, guiding him to a safer position. Elias understood he had to act, but how? He had no weapons, no defenses. Only his mind, his observation skills, and the tools he had brought for research. Quickly, an idea formed. Elias pulled out his portable holographic projector. It was designed for mapping light patterns and recording signals, but he could modify it to create a temporary distraction for the predators. He activated the device, projecting bright, moving lights above the nest, mimicking the flashing patterns of the Avernians but larger and faster. The predators hesitated, confused by the strange, shimmering lights. Elias adjusted the patterns, moving them slowly, then rapidly, drawing the creatures' attention away from the nest. Eris mirrored his movements, sending pulses of light to coordinate the colony's response. Some Avernians moved in tandem with the projection, creating an even more confusing display. Elias marveled at the result. Human creativity combined with alien intelligence could overcome danger. The predators, overwhelmed by the combination of moving lights and the Avernians' rapid signals, eventually veered away, flying deeper into the forest. For a moment, silence returned. The nest's lights dimmed as the colony recalibrated. Eris pulsed slowly, signaling relief and gratitude. Elias exhaled deeply, realizing the significance of what had just happened. He had helped the Avernians survive a life-threatening threat using observation, quick thinking, and adaptation. Over the next few days, Elias and Eris worked closely to strengthen the colony's response strategies. They experimented with light-based warnings, synchronized movements to herd predators away, and subtle signals to alert different parts of the nest. Elias used his human ingenuity to create tools and patterns that the Avernians could integrate into their existing rituals. The relationship between Elias and the colony deepened. He was no longer an outsider. He was a trusted member of the nest, contributing in ways no one else could. Aris seemed particularly attentive, guiding him through each new challenge, teaching him the subtleties of Avernian's emotions and helping him anticipate responses. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the nest, Elias reflected on how much he had learned. The Avernian society was highly structured, yet flexible. Their rituals were not just for show, they were functional systems of communication, defense, and cooperation. Every gesture, every pulse of light carried meaning. And yet, human creativity could enhance their system, providing new solutions for survival. Elias decided to take his integration one step further. He began to participate more actively in the rituals, not as a human observer, but as a cooperative partner. He mirrored complex light sequences, adjusted his gestures to match Aris's rhythm, and even helped coordinate group patterns during daily activities. The Avernians responded positively, recognizing him as a contributor rather than an outsider. This cooperation brought unexpected benefits. Elias discovered hidden aspects of the Avernians' intelligence, their ability to problem-solve collectively, anticipate environmental threats, and adapt rapidly to changing conditions. He realized that the Avernians' rituals were a form of living strategy, designed to ensure the colony's survival while maintaining harmony. But cooperation also meant facing new challenges. One afternoon, a sudden storm swept through the crystal forest. Powerful winds rattled the towers, and sharp hail of crystal shards threatened the nest. The Avernians' usual defensive formations were not enough to protect the colony. Elias acted immediately, guiding them through the storm using coordinated light pulses and reflective signals. He worked alongside Aris, directing the Avernians to safer sections of the nest, while simultaneously stabilizing weak structures with his portable tools. It was exhausting, but the result was remarkable. The colony survived intact, thanks to the combined efforts of human ingenuity and alien cooperation. The storm passed, leaving the forest glistening with moisture and shattered crystal. Elias looked around at the nest, now quiet and glowing softly in the moonlight. The Avernians gathered near him, their lights gentle, rhythmic, and calm. Aris approached, pulsing a steady signal of gratitude. Elias realized that he had earned the trust and respect of an entire alien species. That night, as he recorded his notes, Elias reflected on the lessons of cooperation. Human intelligence is not just about technology or strength. It is about observation, creativity, and the ability to adapt. Working with the Avernians has taught me that understanding another species requires empathy and participation. Together, we can achieve what neither could do alone. The following days were filled with structured learning. Elias began decoding more complex rituals, understanding the meanings behind synchronized patterns of light, gestures, and movement. He experimented with new techniques, projecting coordinated signals across multiple towers, timing human gestures to complement Avernians, light sequences, and even creating subtle patterns that enhanced the colony's communication speed. Through these experiments, Elias discovered an extraordinary fact. The Avernians had an instinctive understanding of strategy and coordination, but humans could introduce concepts like flexibility, improvisation, and predictive planning. It was a perfect synergy. As the weeks went by, Elias and Aris became inseparable in their work. Together, they improved the colony's ability to respond to environmental challenges, predators, and social conflicts. Human ingenuity had become an extension of the Avernians' natural intelligence, and the Avernians had taught him lessons in harmony, communication, and adaptability that no textbook could convey. One evening, Elias observed a private ritual. Aris pulsed a soft, gentle signal, inviting him to participate in a subtle ceremony of trust. The lights danced around them, weaving intricate patterns. Elias mirrored the movements carefully, following Aris's guidance. For the first time, he felt fully integrated into the colony, no longer an observer but a partner. The significance was clear. What had started as a misunderstanding, humans being perceived as a participant in a mating ritual, had evolved into a mutual bond of respect and cooperation. The Avernians had accepted Elias not for what he was, but for what he could contribute: creativity, observation, and empathy. Elias knew that this relationship would shape future interactions between humans and alien species. It was proof that human adaptability, intelligence, and willingness to cooperate could overcome misunderstanding and foster trust. As he prepared for rest that night, Elias looked out over the nest. The crystal towers shimmered softly under the moon's light. The Avernians moved gracefully, their pulses calm and steady. And Aris, ever near, pulsed a slow, rhythmic pattern, almost like a heartbeat, signaling connection and friendship. Elias felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Humanity had landed on Veloria Prime, faced a mysterious and intelligent species, and not only survived but forged a partnership that could inspire interstellar diplomacy. Tomorrow, he knew, would bring new challenges. There would be deeper rituals to decode, new threats to anticipate, and more ways to integrate human ingenuity with alien intelligence. But Elias was ready. He had discovered a fundamental truth: cooperation, understanding, and creativity were the keys to thriving in the unknown. And for the first time, he truly understood what it meant to be human among the stars, not just to survive, but to contribute, to solve, and to connect. Days had turned into weeks on Veloria Prime, and Dr. Elias Tan had long since ceased to feel like an outsider. The crystal nest, once a place of strange rituals and overwhelming beauty, had become his home. Every shimmer of light, every movement of the Avernians, and every pulse from Aris's body was now part of a rhythm he could understand. Elias had learned the deeper layers of the Avernian society. Beyond the dazzling light displays and complex dances, he discovered patterns of cooperation, problem-solving, and strategic planning. Every action had a purpose: to maintain harmony, ensure survival, and strengthen the colony. His initial mission, to observe, had evolved into something far more meaningful: partnership and mutual growth. One morning, Elias noticed unusual activity in the nest. The Avernians were gathering in unprecedented numbers, their lights flashing in patterns he had not seen before. Aris approached, pulsing urgently. Elias understood immediately: something significant was happening. He followed Aris to the central platform, the heart of the nest. There, the entire colony had assembled. The light patterns were intricate, flowing like a living tapestry of communication. Elias realized this was a ceremony of recognition, something the Avernians performed to honor those who had contributed to the colony's well-being. Elias' heart raced. He had never expected this. The Avernians, who had once viewed him with curiosity and cautious suspicion, were now acknowledging his role in their survival. He was not just an observer. He was a participant whose actions had earned respect. Aris led him to the center of the platform. The lights of the colony focused on him, forming patterns that Elias interpreted as symbols of gratitude, trust, and admiration. The significance was profound. These creatures, whose society had been built for thousands of years without human influence, had integrated him into their culture. Elias stood quietly, taking it all in. He realized that his presence had made a difference, not through force, not through domination, but through creativity, observation, and empathy. The humans' ability to adapt and problem-solve had strengthened the Avernians' defenses, improved their communication, and enhanced their ability to survive. Aris pulsed a gentle, rhythmic sequence. It was a signal Elias had come to recognize as friendship and deep respect. He responded with a mirrored sequence, a gesture he had learned to convey his own gratitude and acknowledgement. For a moment, human and Avernian communicated without words, perfectly synchronized. But there was still work to be done. Veloria Prime was a planet of beauty and danger. The crystal forests, while stunning, were home to creatures and environmental challenges that could threaten the colony at any time. Elias knew that his role as a human innovator was far from over. Over the following days, he worked with Aris and the colony to implement long-term improvements. Using his human ingenuity, he designed light-based signaling systems to alert different sections of the nest to environmental changes. He created reflective panels and safe pathways to guide Avernians through storms and predator encounters. Every improvement was subtle, blending seamlessly with the Avernians' natural systems, enhancing their survival without disrupting their society. Elias also focused on educating the Avernians in patterns of prediction and planning. He demonstrated ways to anticipate danger, calculate risk, and coordinate multiple sections of the nest simultaneously. The Avernians absorbed these lessons quickly, incorporating them into their rituals and daily activities. It was a remarkable demonstration of human adaptability and intelligence, our ability to observe, analyze, and improve even in alien environments. One afternoon, a sudden quake shook the forest. The crystal towers trembled, sending cascading vibrations through the nest. Avernians reacted immediately, but Elias was prepared. Using the signaling systems he had helped develop, he coordinated the colony's response. Aris mirrored his instructions, guiding groups to safer sections of the nest. Together, humans and Avernians prevented injuries and maintained order. After the quake, the colony pulsed with calm, steady lights, a clear sign of relief. Aris approached Elias, his glow brighter than ever. Elias realized that human presence had become a stabilizing force, not just for emergencies but for the colony's overall harmony. He had not only observed but enhanced the survival and cohesion of an entire species. That night, Elias sat atop a small crystal outcrop, gazing at the twin moons. He reflected on how far he had come. When he first arrived, he had been cautious, unsure, and hesitant. Now, he was trusted, respected, and valued by beings from another world. The lessons he had learned went beyond science. They were lessons in empathy, communication, and the power of cooperation. As he pondered, Aris joined him. The Avernians' lights pulsed softly, forming patterns Elias had come to understand as curiosity and companionship. Elias reached out with a mirrored gesture. For several moments, the two of them simply communicated through light, sharing understanding and trust without a single spoken word. Elias knew that this bond would have long-term consequences. The Avernians now had access to human ideas, creativity, and problem-solving skills. And humanity had learned from a species whose intelligence, social coordination, and resilience rivaled their own. It was a partnership that could shape the future of interstellar diplomacy. In the days that followed, Elias compiled his findings into a detailed report for the Interstellar Xenobiology Council. He included observations on behavior, social hierarchy, communication patterns, and the successful integration of human-inspired strategies. But he also highlighted something more important: the power of mutual respect, empathy, and cooperation. The Avernians, for their part, continued to honor him in their rituals. Each evening, they performed subtle light dances that seemed to recognize his contributions, signaling acceptance and appreciation. Aris remained at his side, guiding, teaching, and sharing. Elias realized that he had not only survived among this species, he had helped them thrive. One evening, a new pattern appeared in the nest's lights, a sequence that Elias had never seen before. Aris approached, pulsing the sequence repeatedly. Elias studied it carefully. Slowly, he recognized it as a message of lasting alliance. The Avernians were offering a formal acknowledgement. Humans were no longer outsiders. They were partners, allies, friends. Elias felt a surge of pride. Humanity had arrived on Veloria Prime not as conquerors or intruders, but as collaborators. Through intelligence, observation, and empathy, they had forged a relationship built on trust and mutual respect. As the twin moons rose again, casting silver light across the crystal towers, Elias reflected on the journey. From the initial misunderstanding of being perceived as part of a ritual, he had grown to understand the Avernians' culture, contributed to their survival, and earned their lasting trust. It was a story of human adaptability, courage, and ingenuity, a testament to what humanity could achieve when guided by intellect and heart. Elias made one final entry in his recorder for the day. Today, I am no longer an observer. I am a partner. The Avernians have accepted me, and through this bond, humanity has shown that understanding, respect, and ingenuity are the keys to thriving in the universe. We did not dominate. We did not disrupt. We contributed, and that is the greatest achievement of all. With that thought, Elias gazed over the nest, watching the soft pulses of light from the colony. The crystal towers shimmered, reflecting the harmony of an entire species. Eris pulsed a slow, steady rhythm beside him, a symbol of friendship that transcended language, biology, and worlds. Veloria Prime was no longer just a distant planet. It was a home of discovery, cooperation, and hope, a place where humanity had made a difference through knowledge, empathy, and action. And as Elias closed his eyes that night, he knew this was only the beginning. Humanity's journey among the stars had proven one truth. When humans met the unknown with intelligence, courage, and understanding, nothing was impossible. The Avernians glowed softly around him, and Elias smiled. Together, they had forged a future built on respect, collaboration, and shared achievement. Humanity had arrived, and in the heart of an alien nest, it had found its first true allies among the stars. I was assigned to her nest for observation. She took it as a mating ritual Sci-Fi Stories.